the idea of ethnic boundaries for marriage is a rabbinic phenomenon. It's not biblical. Which is why, one of the reasons, by the way, that when someone asks me to do a wedding of a Jew and a non-Jew, they say it's an intermarriage. I say, well, if you're going to create a Jewish home, I'm happy to do it. I mean, I don't draw ethnic boundaries. I don't require that a person convert, because most Jews today would not pass the conversion threshold. So it's a little bit, unfair. And people say to me, so why are you so relaxed about it? I said, because I believe in the Bible. Bible tells me so. So the Bible says we can be relaxed about this. So that's the first thing I want to clarify. So the issue is not Midianite, the issue is not Moabite, the issue is apostasy, and especially apostasy in a fertility cult, and the great problematics of apostasy in a fertility cult. Now, what's the proximate problem? We're getting ready to go back into our land. We've been in the Sinai desert, and at least mythically, we've been eating manna. You did not need a fertility cult to eat manna. God brought it down. Even in maybe in the raising of animals. I think when one has animals, you can actually see the food. In general they're going to produce the young. I think crops is a much, much more tenuous kind of enterprise. I found out recently, because for strange reasons, our lawn recently just morally collapsed, as you might say. So I used to be when I lived on kibbutz. One thing I did was plant lawns, and so there's a special procedure where we went to another lawn, and there's an aerator, and you get these big piles of grass, and then you water it for a couple days. You go to a new place, you till the soil, get it all ready, put the fertilizer, bring over the sprouts from the other ones, spread it around. 3 days later, you have a lawn. So my wife says, we need a new lawn. I said, I know how to plant lawns. I actually did that professionally. So she says, okay, you have the first pass at planting the lawn. So it's different without a tractor. Right, so that's the first thing I learned, right? So then I, tilling this, hardened soil, with a pitchfork. So I said, well, I'll just water it, right? So of course, then I was just tilling mud with a pitchfork, right? And I thought, it wasn't this hard on the kibbutz. Something's missing, right? So I realized it was the tractor. All right, so I got this, I got one patch done. I said, okay, now I'm going to fertilize, now I'm going to seed it, and it came out with a lot of bald spots. And, I'm looking at it, and, my daughter's with me. She says, Daddy, we followed all the directions. Why does it look so horrible? I said, I don't know, right? I don't know why it looks so horrible. So, we found a crew that actually planted a lawn down the street. They know how to plant a lawn. I mean, I watched these guys, and, because I read a lot about it. They did it right. The lawn's coming in. It's great. So I was thinking about fertility cults. If you're out there, you don't know what's going to come out of the ground. You put the seed in, you put the fertilizer, you till it. You want to cover every base to get those crops up, right? So I think, going into Canaan, getting ready to farm, people thought to themselves, we have to cover every base and make sure that the land is fertile, otherwise we starve. So the Moabites come along and say, and the Midianites, we have that one. Now, this is not Yitro, because remember, Yitro left the Midianites to become what you might say like a Ronin, the samurai without a lord, the Ronin. He's like a Ronin priest. He's not in Midian. He's out in the middle of the Sinai desert doing his own thing. So in a way, he's left the Midianite community, and I think he's understood to be more of a man who was a Midianite priest, still has the title, but not a priest of the Midianite people. This is different. Now we're getting close to the actual Midianite people, and they're telling the people of Israel, you want to go to land, you have to have fertility cults, right? And so what happens with the people, right? Clearly in this little portion, they say yes. They say we'll do it. And then there's a sense here in the parsha that the people begin to fight each other. There are those who say, let's go along with this. Let's do as the other nations. We're going to have land, got to have a fertility cult. And others say, anybody who goes and worships their god, the god's name was Baal Peor, we're going to kill you. So you see this in verse 5. Moses said to the judges, let each man kill his men who were attached to Baal Peor. So we have this great fight. And then in verse 7, Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, saw. He stood up from amid the assembly, took a spear. He followed the Israelite man into the tent, pierced them both, the Israelite man and the woman in their stomach. The plague was halted, and those who died in the plague were 24,000. So the question is, when Moses said, let's fight, what happened that Pinchas had to be there? So there's a wonderful midrash that says it. Someone said to Moses, why are we fighting? And he said, look at Zimri. Their names were Zimri and Cosby. So he said, look at Zimri. He's going with this Midianite woman. So someone said to Moses, you married a Midianite woman. What's the problem here? So at that point, Moses morally collapsed. He didn't know what to say. So it says that Moses then did not know what to say. He lost his bearings and went to the tent of meeting, and he threw himself before God. This is all in the Midrash. Is God, what should I do? I don't understand. And then when the people saw Moses collapse, they collapsed, and things began to fall apart. This is in the Midrash. So Pinchas sees this, and he realizes dramatic action is needed. Right? Now, apostasy is against the law. It is punishable by death, but by a court. So the question is of extrajudicial punishment. It's a big problem like in our time today. I mean, I actually had a little discussion after services where, after the morning study session, we talked about moral panic. And, some people say, the heightened aggressiveness of American security forces that include, depending on your politics, harsh interrogation or torture. Some people say, well, that was moral panic. Other people said, no, we had some deadly enemies that were trying to kill us, and we had to up the game a little bit because they upped the game. So some people say, well, that was moral panic. Other people say it was a necessary response. So anytime you're doing things extrajudicially, where you don't have the governance of the judge, is questionable. So vigilante justice, and we have a strong mythic appreciation in our culture for vigilante justice. I know people who hate vigilante justice, love Clint Eastwood movies. And I say to them, you can't have both, right? It's one or the other, right? But if you've ever looked at, the Dirty Harry and the westerns that Clint Eastwood is in, I remember watching them very carefully. I was actually saw them, a few of them, a second time when I was studying, doing my undergraduate degree in religion, and I got introduced to the idea of myth, and I was watching this character who would come in from nowhere, would not grow as a human being. If you notice, the vigilante shows up, don't know who he is, nothing about him, the man with no name. He, in a very stoic way, embarrasses the cowardly townspeople, kills the bad guys, and takes off. So we have in our culture a mythic image of the sheriff coming into town who is already a full human being. And by that, if you look at it from the other side, this could be a part of a person's, their inner life, a progression. The crisis, what do I do? Well, in our image of the vigilante, typically the Clint Eastwood character in many movies has no crisis. I mean, he's the guy that comes into town and says, good, evil, destroy evil. It's that simple. And then he does it. And many people, when they watch these movies, there's a great sense of moral relief. I mean, why do people go back and see, why the Death Wish movies with Charles Bronson? I mean, why do those fill the theaters? People have, I think, a strong mythic sense that there's good and there's evil, and the judicial system as we know it can't protect us. And that's not good enough.